Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely because I suppose, yeah, I do sort of similar things in terms of trying to introduce people to like a 12-step philosophy that is most relevant around addiction, but has applications, I think, across mental health, and is probably a useful tool for people in all areas of life, because I think they're applicable to relationships and work.
Agreed.
Anything that you get attached to or obsessed with. But I'm aware that it is like that what you can achieve is I'm too aware of two things. One is there are limitations to what can be achieved, but also that in my own life there have been sort of just moments of kindness and love and positivity that have had an incredible impact on me and really changed the direction of my life.
Yep.
How did you? How come from what I know about you, you've got a pretty complicated life, given that you're a father when you're pretty young. Yeah. You're obviously a gay man. What's going on? Tell us what's going on, how we get to this situation. Well, I've got quite a lot of questions.
Yeah, I mean, so immigrant parents. My parents are Jamaican and Cuban. And they gave me a name like Karamo, which set me off on a path of being challenged daily on like, you're different, you're not good enough, and all those things.
Well, you're not always quite handsome and big.
Now, who's the charmer? You're the charmer. You're the charmer. Yeah, but that's perspective.
I think when you meet handsome big people, like, how insecure could you have been with your exotic name?
Exactly. You would think that I would be more confident, but when you're I grew up in Texas, and so
okay, that's not going to be easy.
Yeah, exactly. So every woman around me was very much like, why are you so big? Why are you so dark? Why is your name like that? That was constantly the question of why was a trigger for me for a long time of there's something wrong with me. Because if you ask me why, you're not seeing how special I am or the potential that I have. You're doubting me just from the get-go because of these external features or my name. And it was difficult. And that set me on a path of early addiction to porn, to weed, to then...
how old are we here in this bit?
16.
16, porn and weed.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I talk about, I have a book out, and I talk about that. For me, accessing weed was easy because my father was a Rastafarian, and he enjoyed smoking weed. So I didn't have to go to the street corner.
In fact.
Yeah, so I didn't have to go to a corner. I just went to his bedside and took the weed that I wanted. And then we also had this big basketball in our freezer. No meat, a big basketball of weed in there. So I would just bring friends over and take weed out and smoke weed all day. And luckily it didn't affect my schoolwork because I was still smart enough to know like how to turn it off for the schoolwork, but it clouded me on every other, choice I made. And then that became a point where it wasn't enough. So then ecstasy became the drug of choice. And then, 3-4 pills in, that wasn't enough. And then I met my match, which was I always say you're in danger, girl, when you meet the drug that matches your personality. And cocaine for me was that. It was like, I am very structured, a little bit of OCD, type A personality. And cocaine only brought that out like 24-fold. I was the one planning parties, saying, let's go here, let's do this. Everything's organized, everything. I mean, I was on 10, 24/7. And, it got to the point where I was doing an 8-ball a day, 2 8-balls a day, which is an eighth of coke for anybody who doesn't understand that. But then I would try to take a day off to function and become super depressed, and which then led to suicidal ideations and my health deteriorating because I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't eating. And the thing that saved my life was getting a stack of papers on my doorstep for back child support for a child I didn't know. She was the last girl I dated when I was 15, before I started letting people into my life regarding my sexuality. And she didn't tell me because we had both moved away. And so she didn't know how to find me. This is 1995, so we didn't have the advent of technology. And seeing the paperwork, I went out and had one bender night and woke up the next day and was like, I can't do this if there's a kid out there that needs me. And immediately moved back to Texas, where my family was there to support me in getting sober. Meeting my child made me more sober because I didn't want him to ever see me high or drunk. And then got back on this path of going back into social services. And eventually I adopted his little brother because he was in a situation, was being removed from his mother's home. And so all of a sudden, in a matter of 2.5 years, became a father of 2. And
how old were you then?
27, 28.
So
Yeah.
that for you was up until that point, you'd lived a quite hedonistic, individualistic lifestyle.
Completely. Yeah.
You were going for it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until you recognized that you had responsibility that you changed direction.
Yeah. Well, you just said the key thing, recognizing you have responsibility. And the thing that I realize now is that I always had responsibility. The biggest responsibility was to myself. But I never paid attention to the responsibility to myself because I had been so damaged by the negative narratives that were being put on me and the fact that I never did work on myself. So I didn't think I was responsible for myself. I always felt someone else was responsible for me. Someone else was responsible for me to be happy, for me to be taken care of. And so, me getting kids made me realize not only am I responsible for them, but I'm responsible for me to start living better. And that was key.
I had a similar, I think, reaction to becoming a father much later in life. Like it made me recognize you can't live in this sustained infantilized state of being like a man-child. Even by then, I was clean from drugs and alcohol. I was aware of my addiction to sex and was practicing a program around it. I feel that with my addiction, the condition migrates to different behaviors, different substances. I'll get obsessive about work. I'll get obsessive about what other people think about me. I'll want to control things that are beyond my control. Becoming a father, it made me realize that precisely as you said, I was responsible for them, so I had to be responsible for me. I had to be a man in order to take care of a family. So a lot of apparatus changed in my life. A lot of relationships immediately changed. A lot of what was acceptable altered. I mean, even pretty things that might seem quite superficial, like starting to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, is because I'd always avoided physical conflict, not enjoyed intimacy around men, not liked situations where I felt inferior or belittled and was exposed to, and I noticed like in the work, in your television work, that you talk about the importance of sort of owning your body and becoming grounded and the psychological component of that. I found that to be true for myself.
Well, you do the work. I've followed your career for a long time, and it's always interesting to me. I'm like, is Russell a secret therapist and we don't know about this? Because everything you've done, from when you talk about the program, mentoring, the jiu-jitsu and that physicality of it all of that is helping people to connect with their mind and body so that they can start to think critically about how to be better and to grow and to heal. And I think it's just phenomenal that, first of all, you have your platform. So thank you so much for the work you're doing. It's pretty exceptional.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That's really, really beautiful. Thank you for creating a sort of, what I feel is important is ways for men to be sort of conversational with each other about their emotions. Like now, I don't have the sort of obvious, say, racial or orientation issues, and I'm not from fucking Texas. Like, no disrespect for anyone in Texas, but like, because I've been there in Austin, for example, school, and I bet I'd love Dallas. I bet I'd love all of it. Humans are humans, but like, but that's one of the things we learn on Queer Eye regularly. Right? Those people are beautiful. I like that cop one. I liked that episode. My feelings about sort of what is required of me to be considered a man, that I, not feeling not good enough. These are things that I've sort of worked through quite slowly, sort of acknowledging, I'm doing this, like, I want to be famous, so that people, like, it creates a sort of a bit of a barrier. It makes me feel elevated, makes me feel important, and then recognizing, it's sort of, it can't work for you. It's empty unless you find something real in it, unless you find something, and which always sort of comes down to, for me, can you be of service to others? It always comes down to what sort of spiritual principles. Have you found that?
Yeah, agreed. I think that's what makes me feel good in the morning, of knowing that I'm of service to others. But within being of service to others, it helps me to be more in service to myself, and not in a selfish or narcissistic or egotistical way, but in the way of like, I tell people every statement should always start with I. And it's because I think a lot of times we start with they did this, you did this, we are, and it should always start with I, of how am I trying to better myself so that I can better others. And it just gives you a different perception and feeling in the world. I wake up happy. so often because it's just really good. Like there was a time when I used to wake up in, like just drug depressed stupors because I was just so aggravated about life and what wasn't happening, what they did to me and what my dad did to me. And it was just like, I had to let it go and realize that I was responsible for my own self and my own happiness, and that life is okay, and that I can work to make it better, even if I'm on a journey of not feeling good about who I am right now.